The crystal champagne flute shattered against marble as Marcus stepped through the glass doors. Richard Whitmore's eyes narrowed, scanning the black man's casual clothes with practiced disdain. The sound of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony drifted through Whitmore and Associates like expensive perfume. Cedar and leather mingled in the air of Madison Avenue's most exclusive menswear boutique. Marcus Thompson adjusted his simple polo shirt and stepped deeper into the store. He needed a tuxedo, not just any tuxedo, a $3,000 piece that would command respect at tomorrow's charity gala. The same gala where he'd deliver the keynote speech to 500 of New York's most influential business leaders. "Excuse me, sir." Richard Whitmore materialized beside him, his voice carrying the weight of inherited authority. "Are you perhaps looking for something specific?" Marcus smiled. "I need a tuxedo for tomorrow evening." Richard's eyebrows lifted slightly. His gaze swept over Marcus's jeans and sneakers. "I see. Well, there's a men's warehouse about 6 blocks south. They handle more accessible options." "I'm looking for something here." The silence stretched between them. Richard's practiced smile never wavered, but his eyes hardened. "Of course. Let me show you our selection." He led Marcus to a corner rack, clearance items marked down 60%. Polyester blends and outdated cuts hung like forgotten promises. Marcus touched the fabric of a navy jacket, rough, cheap. "These are excellent value," Richard said. "We offer payment plans for qualified customers." Elena Rodriguez watched from behind the register. She'd worked here 3 years, long enough to recognize the dance. The subtle steering, the assumptions wrapped in politeness. These black stories played out weekly in high-end retail. "Actually," Marcus said, "I was hoping to see your premium collection." Richard's smile tightened. "Those pieces are reserved for established clientele." "I understand. May I see them anyway?" "They require significant investment. The Italian collection starts at $8,000. Marcus nodded. "Perfect." Richard blinked. Something flickered across his features. Surprise, then suspicion. "I'll need to see proper identification and credit approval first." From across the store, Elena watched a white customer browse the premium section freely. No ID check, no credit discussion, just respectful assistance from James, the assistant manager. Marcus reached for his wallet. "Of course." But Richard had already turned away, busying himself with paperwork. "Actually, our system requires advance appointments for premium consultations. Insurance purposes." Marcus stood quietly, processing. His fingers drummed once against his thigh, a habit from his Marine days. Years of combat had taught him to observe before acting, to gather intelligence before engaging. The store's security cameras caught everything. Marcus noted their positions, their angles. He'd built his tech company on data analysis, pattern recognition. This pattern was crystal clear. "I see," he said finally. "And when might I schedule an appointment?" Richard pretended to check his calendar. "Unfortunately, we're booked solid through next month." Elena's stomach twisted. She'd seen the appointment book. Tomorrow was completely empty. Marcus pulled out his phone. "I'll call my assistant. Perhaps she can work something out." "That won't be necessary," Richard said quickly. "As I mentioned, our premium pieces require particular discretion." The word hung in the air like smoke. Discretion. The kind of discretion that kept certain people out. The kind that preserved the character of establishments like Whitmore and Associates. Marcus tucked his phone away. "I understand completely." He walked toward the exit, then paused. "Beautiful store. Third-generation family business, isn't it?" Richard's chest swelled with pride. "Indeed. My grandfather established these standards in 1952. "Standards," Marcus repeated softly. "Important to maintain standards." Something in his tone made Richard uncomfortable, but Marcus was already moving toward the door, leaving only the faint scent of his cologne and the echo of his words. Elena watched him go, her heart heavy with familiar shame. Another customer lost to prejudice. Another story of dignity denied. But Marcus Thompson wasn't just another customer. And tomorrow, Richard Whitmore would discover that some real-life stories don't end with walking away. Marcus returned the next morning at 10 a.m. sharp. This time, he wore a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Italian leather shoes clicked against marble with military precision. Richard looked up from his morning coffee, confusion clouding his features. Aren't you the gentleman from yesterday? Marcus Thompson, he said, extending his hand. I believe we have an appointment. Richard's handshake was weak, distracted. I'm sorry, I don't recall scheduling anything. Perhaps there was a miscommunication. Marcus smiled. I'm here about the acquisition. The word hit Richard like cold water. Acquisition? The retail technology implementation. My company was considering a significant investment. Richard's face went pale. Your company? Thompson Tech Solutions. We specialize in retail analytics and point-of-sale systems. Marcus's voice remained calm, conversational. I believe someone forwarded our proposal? Behind the register, Elena's eyes widened. Thompson Tech Solutions. She'd heard of them, the company that digitized half of Manhattan's luxury retail. Their CEO was... I'm afraid there's been some confusion, Richard stammered. I don't recall any proposal from... No confusion. Marcus reached into his briefcase. I have everything documented. He placed a small digital recorder on the counter. Richard stared at it like it might explode. What is that? Yesterday's conversation. I record all business interactions. Marcus pressed play. His own voice filled the store. I need a tuxedo for tomorrow evening. Then Richard's response. There's a men's warehouse about 6 blocks south. They handle more accessible options. The recording continued. Every dismissive comment, every assumption, every microaggression preserved in digital clarity. Richard's hands shook. You can't. This is entrapment. It's documentation, Marcus corrected. Standard business practice. Elena stepped forward. Mr. Whitmore, I think you should listen to what he's saying. Elena, please return to your duties. Richard's voice cracked slightly, but Elena had already pulled out her phone. I have footage, too, from yesterday and this morning. The store filled with tension so thick it felt solid. Richard looked between Marcus and Elena, his world tilting on its axis. You set this up, Richard accused. This whole thing was planned. I came here to buy a tuxedo, Marcus said simply. What happened after that was your choice. You deceived me, pretended to be someone else. I told you exactly who I was, Marcus Thompson, customer. You chose to see something different. Richard's face flushed red. I won't be lectured by... He caught himself, but the words hung unfinished. Marcus raised an eyebrow. By whom, Mr. Whitmore? Silence. Even the Beethoven seemed to pause. I think, Marcus said quietly, we should discuss your retail technology needs. I don't need your technology. Actually, you do. Your point-of-sale system is 12 years old. Your inventory tracking is manual. Your customer database is non-existent. Richard's mouth opened and closed. How could he possibly know that? I spent 30 minutes in your store yesterday. I observed everything. Your inefficiencies, your outdated processes, your liability exposures. Marcus opened his briefcase fully. Legal documents emerged. Financial projections. Market analysis reports. Thompson Tech Solutions was considering a $15 million investment in retail technology partnerships. Your store was on our preliminary list. $15 million. The number hit Richard like a physical blow. His store's annual revenue was barely $800,000. This investment would transform everything. However, Marcus continued, we have strict ethical standards for our partners. He placed a contract on the counter. Section 4.7 was highlighted in yellow. Partner businesses must demonstrate commitment to equal treatment of all customers, regardless of race, gender, religion, or socioeconomic status. Richard read the clause 3 times. His hands trembled. Yesterday's interaction, Marcus said, would constitute a violation of this partnership agreement. You're being dramatic. One conversation doesn't define... Elena, would you share your observations? Elena stepped forward, phone in hand. I have recordings from 17 similar incidents over the past year, all involving customers of color, all following the same pattern. The blood drained from Richard's face. 17 incidents, all documented, all evidence of systematic discrimination. You can't prove intent, Richard whispered. I don't need to prove intent. I need to prove pattern. And the pattern is clear. Marcus gathered his documents. I'll be submitting my final assessment to the board this afternoon. Wait, Richard's voice broke. Please, we can work this out. Can we? Richard looked around his store, his grandfather's legacy, his family's pride, everything he'd inherited and protected, all of it crumbling because of one man's decision to walk through his door. What do you want? Marcus studied him for a long moment. I want you to understand something, Mr. Whitmore. I didn't come here to destroy your business. I came here to buy a tuxedo. You chose to see me as a threat instead of a customer. I made a mistake. You made a choice. There's a difference. The store fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic. Richard's empire balanced on a knife's edge, and Marcus held the blade. I can make this right, Richard pleaded. Training, policies, whatever you need. Marcus picked up his recorder. Yesterday you said some people don't understand their place in society. Perhaps it's time you learned yours. He walked toward the door, leaving Richard standing among the ruins of his assumptions. Will you at least consider it? Richard called after him. Marcus paused at the threshold. I'll consider many things, Mr. Whitmore. But first, I have a tuxedo to buy. The door closed behind him with a soft chime. Richard stood alone in his store, surrounded by expensive clothes and the echoes of his choices. Elena looked at her boss, really looked at him, and saw a man who'd just met his match. Outside, Marcus Thompson walked down Madison Avenue, his phone already ringing with calls from his legal team. The game had changed. The real question was whether Richard Whitmore could change with it. Marcus sat in the coffee shop across the street, watching Whitmore and Associates through floor-to-ceiling windows. Steam rose from his espresso, untouched. His mind wasn't on caffeine. The store looked different from outside. Smaller, more fragile, like most prejudices when viewed from a distance. His phone buzzed. Sarah Chen, his chief legal officer. The Whitmore research is complete. Want the full report? Send it. The PDF arrived within seconds. Marcus scrolled through pages of financial data, customer complaints, employment records. The picture wasn't pretty. Whitmore and Associates was drowning. Revenue down 40% over 3 years. Premium brands pulling their partnerships. Young customers shopping elsewhere. The business model was as outdated as its owner's attitudes. But there was something else. Something that made Marcus's jaw tighten. Complaint number 47. Made my daughter feel unwelcome because of her skin color. These are complaint number 52. Refused to show me items I specifically requested. Complaint number 63. Treated me like a criminal from the moment I walked in. 17 incidents Elena had mentioned, but the complaint log showed 47 formal complaints in 2 years, all from customers of color, all dismissed by Richard as misunderstandings. Marcus closed the file. His reflection stared back from the phone screen. Tired eyes, set jaw, the same expression he'd worn in Afghanistan when studying enemy positions. This wasn't about one store. It was about a system, a mindset, a belief that some people mattered less than others. He thought about his grandfather, Jerome Thompson, 1963, Nashville. Jerome had saved for months to buy a suit for his wedding. The store owner had made him wait outside while white customers were served. When Jerome finally got inside, he was told the good suits were reserved for others. Jerome had married his grandmother in a borrowed jacket. He'd never spoken about it, but the shame had lived in his shoulders for decades. Marcus had built his company on a simple principle: dignity for everyone. Every employee, every customer, every interaction. The principle had made him wealthy. More importantly, it had made him free. His phone rang. Marcus Thompson. Sir, it's David. The board meeting has been moved to 2 p.m. They want to discuss the retail expansion. Good. Send them the Whitmore file, all of it. Sir, the complaint records too? Especially the complaint records. Marcus ended the call and stared at the store again. Richard was visible through the window, pacing behind the counter. Elena stood nearby, watching him with obvious concern. An interesting woman, Elena. She'd worked there 3 years, witnessed dozens of incidents, yet never spoke up. Until today. What had changed? Marcus had read her employment file. Single mother. Community college graduate. Needed the job. Couldn't afford to be a whistleblower until someone gave her permission. His phone buzzed again. Text from his assistant. Gala reminder. Speech at 7 p.m. Topic: building bridges in business. Ironic timing? Marcus smiled for the first time all day. Ironic indeed. The gala would host 500 of New York's most influential business leaders. CEOs, investors, politicians. People who shaped policy and opinion. People who could amplify a message. He'd planned to speak about supply chain ethics, how companies could build more inclusive partnerships, standard corporate social responsibility content. But now he had a story. A real-time case study in how prejudice hurt business, how discrimination was bad for profits, how dignity was good for the bottom line. Marcus opened his laptop and began typing. The speech would be different now. Personal, immediate, powerful. Yesterday, I experienced something that many of you might recognize. He worked for an hour, crafting sentences that would resonate without attacking, building bridges, not walls, showing consequences, not assigning blame. These touching stories had the power to change minds, not through guilt or shame, but through economic reality, through data, through the language business leaders understood best: risk and reward. At 1:30, he closed the laptop and walked back toward Madison Avenue. Time for the board meeting. Time to decide Richard Whitmore's fate. But first, he had one more stop to make. Marcus entered Whitmore & Associates at exactly 2:15 p.m. This time, he wasn't alone. Sarah Chen, his chief legal officer, carried a leather portfolio. David Kim, VP of Strategic Partnerships, held a tablet displaying financial projections. Behind them, Michael Rodriguez, Elena's cousin and one of New York's most respected civil rights attorneys, completed the group. The message was clear. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a reckoning. Richard looked up from his desk, his face pale. Mr. Thompson, I wasn't expecting a formal business meeting. You should have been. Marcus gestured to the conference area Richard used for VIP customers. Shall we? Elena watched from the register, her heart pounding. She'd called her cousin Michael the moment Marcus left that morning. Now, seeing him walk through the door in his sharp suit, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Richard, Michael said, settling into a chair, we need to discuss some legal matters. I don't need a lawyer present for this. You might want to reconsider. Sarah placed a thick folder on the table. These are complaint records from your store. 47 documented incidents of discriminatory treatment over 24 months. Richard's hands shook as he opened the folder. These are just customer service issues. Pattern recognition suggests otherwise, David said, activating his tablet. We've analyzed the data. The discrimination index is 847% above retail industry standards. Discrimination index? A metric we developed to measure bias in customer interactions. Your store ranks in the 99th percentile for discriminatory behavior. Marcus watched Richard absorb this information. The man's world was crumbling in real time. Numbers didn't lie. Data didn't discriminate. "This is ridiculous," Richard said finally. "You can't quantify courtesy." "We can quantify outcomes," Sarah replied. Average service time for white customers, 12 minutes. Average service time for black customers, 4 minutes. Time spent showing premium items, 18 minutes versus 2 minutes. That's not intentional. Intent doesn't matter. Impact does. Marcus leaned forward. "Richard, I want to show you something." He opened his laptop and played a video. Security footage from yesterday, enhanced and edited. Richard's treatment of Marcus was crystal clear. The dismissive gestures, the condescending tone, the deliberate steering toward cheaper options. "This is your establishment," Marcus said. "Your choices, your liability. You can't use security footage without permission." "Actually, we can." Michael smiled. New York's anti-discrimination laws allow for documentation of bias incidents. This footage constitutes evidence in a potential civil rights violation. Richard's face went white. "Civil rights violation?" "Section 8 of the Civil Rights Act covers public accommodations. Your store qualifies. Yesterday's interaction constitutes a clear violation." I didn't mean—" "You meant exactly what you did," Marcus said quietly. "You saw a black man and made assumptions. You treated me as less than human because of my skin color. It's exactly what happened. The question now is, what are you going to do about it?" Sarah pulled out another document. "We're prepared to file a federal discrimination lawsuit. The evidence is overwhelming. The financial damages could be significant." "How significant?" "Punitive damages alone could exceed $2 million. That's before we calculate lost business, reputational harm, and legal fees." Richard's breathing became shallow. $2 million would destroy him. The store, his family's legacy, his personal finances, all gone. "However," Marcus continued, "we're also prepared to offer an alternative." "What kind of alternative?" "A partnership, real partnership, with real consequences." David activated a presentation on his tablet. "Thompson Tech Solutions is launching an initiative called Dignity First. We're identifying retail partners who commit to measurable inclusion standards." "Measurable how?" "Customer satisfaction surveys, mystery shopper programs, employee diversity training, third-party audits, real accountability." Sarah added, "Partners who meet our standards receive technology upgrades, marketing support, and preferential vendor relationships." "And if they don't meet standards?" "Partnership termination, public disclosure of non-compliance, industry blacklisting." Marcus watched Richard process this information. The man's ego was warring with his survival instincts, pride versus pragmatism. "This is blackmail," Richard said finally. "It's business," Marcus replied. "The same business principles you applied to me yesterday. The difference is, I'm offering you something you never offered me." "Which is?" "Dignity. The chance to change, to grow, to become better than you were." Richard looked around his store, his grandfather's legacy, his family's pride. Everything he'd built and inherited balanced on his next words. What would the partnership look like? Full compliance with anti-discrimination protocols, quarterly diversity audits, employee sensitivity training, public apology for past behavior. Public apology? A statement acknowledging past mistakes and committing to change. Published in the New York Times business section. Richard's ego recoiled. "I won't humiliate myself publicly." "Then you'll be humiliated privately, in court, with much worse consequences." The silence stretched between them. Outside, Madison Avenue buzzed with afternoon traffic. Inside, a man's future hung in the balance. "I need time to think," Richard said. "You have until tomorrow morning," Marcus replied. "I'm speaking at the Business Leaders Gala tonight. If I don't have your answer by then, I'll be sharing this story with 500 of New York's most influential executives." "You wouldn't. I would. And I will. Because these life stories matter. Because real change requires real consequences." Marcus stood, his team following. "Richard, I want you to understand something. I didn't come here to destroy you. I came here to buy a tuxedo. You chose to see me as a threat instead of a customer. Now I'm offering you a choice: grow or go." He walked toward the door, then paused. "Elena, you've been documenting everything. Would you like to share your observations?" Elena stepped forward, her voice steady. "I've worked here 3 years. I've seen this happen dozens of times. I stayed quiet because I needed this job, but I can't stay quiet anymore." She looked directly at Richard. "You're not a bad person, but you do bad things. And bad things have consequences." Marcus nodded. "Elena, we'll be in touch. Your documentation will be valuable for our partner evaluation process." As the door closed behind them, Richard stood alone in his store, surrounded by expensive clothes and the weight of his choices. The clock on the wall read 2:47 p.m. The gala started at 6 o'clock p.m. Marcus Thompson's speech was scheduled for 7 o'clock p.m. Richard had 4 hours to decide: transform or be transformed. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel sparkled with power and influence. 500 of New York's most prominent business leaders filled tables adorned with crystal and gold. The annual Business Leaders Gala was where fortunes were made and reputations were destroyed. Marcus Thompson stood at the podium, his presence commanding absolute attention. The black tuxedo he wore, purchased that afternoon from a competitor, fit perfectly. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you about a business transaction that happened yesterday. A transaction that will change how we think about customer service, corporate responsibility, and the true cost of discrimination." In the audience, venture capitalists leaned forward. CEOs put down their phones. When Marcus Thompson spoke, people listened. "I walked into a high-end retail store. I was treated like a criminal, not because of my actions, but because of my appearance, because of assumptions made in the first 3 seconds of contact." He clicked to the first slide. "This is the Whitmore and Associates complaint log. 47 documented incidents of discriminatory treatment in 24 months, all involving customers of color." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several attendees were Whitmore customers. They'd never seen this data. "The owner, Richard Whitmore, is here tonight." Marcus gestured to table 12, where Richard sat frozen, his face pale. Hundreds of eyes turned toward him. The weight of their gaze was crushing. "Richard, would you like to address the audience?" The room fell silent. Richard's hands shook as he stood. His voice came out as a whisper. I apologize. My behavior was unacceptable." "Louder, please. The people in the back can't hear you." Richard cleared his throat. "I apologize for my discriminatory behavior. I was wrong. There's no excuse for treating any customer with disrespect." Applause was scattered, uncomfortable. This wasn't the usual gala entertainment. Marcus clicked to the next slide. "This morning, Richard signed a partnership agreement with Thompson Tech Solutions. He committed to measurable inclusion standards, quarterly diversity audits, and employee sensitivity training. More importantly, he committed to change, real change, systemic change." He clicked again. "But Richard isn't the only one who needs to change. How many of you have similar complaint logs? How many have turned away customers because of assumptions?" The room grew uncomfortable. These were successful people, proud of their achievements. They didn't like being questioned. "I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here to show you opportunity." The opportunity to build better businesses, more inclusive businesses, more profitable businesses. Click. Companies with diverse leadership teams are 35% more likely to outperform their competitors. Inclusive workplaces have 40% lower turnover rates. Diverse customer bases generate 19% more revenue. The numbers mattered. These people understood profit and loss. Thomson Tech Solutions is launching the Dignity First initiative. We're partnering with retailers who commit to measurable inclusion standards. We're providing technology, training, and support to help them succeed. Click. More importantly, we're creating accountability. Partners who meet our standards receive preferential treatment. Those who don't face consequences. Marcus paused, scanning the room. Because dignity isn't just the right thing to do. It's the smart thing to do. It's the profitable thing to do. He clicked to the final slide. Black stories matter. Life stories matter. These touching stories of discrimination hurt all of us. They hurt our businesses, our communities, our economy. But real-life stories of change inspire us. They show us what's possible when we choose dignity over prejudice, when we choose growth over comfort. The applause was thunderous. Standing ovation. Marcus had turned a story of discrimination into a business imperative. As the evening ended, dozens of executives approached Marcus. They wanted to learn about the Dignity First initiative. They wanted to partner with Thomson Tech Solutions. They wanted to be on the right side of history. Richard Whitmore sat at his table, isolated and humiliated. His wife had left early, embarrassed by the public exposure. His usual social circle avoided him. But Elena Rodriguez approached him. "Mr. Whitmore, I have something to tell you." "What now?" "I recorded everything, every discriminatory incident, every complaint you dismissed, every customer you mistreated." Richard's heart sank. "You're going to destroy me." "No, I'm going to help you change, if you want to change." She sat beside him. "I need this job. My family depends on it. But I can't work somewhere that treats people like objects." "What do you want?" "I want to be part of the solution. Mr. Thompson offered me a position with his consulting team. I'm going to help train retail employees. I'm going to help prevent this from happening to other people." Richard nodded slowly. "What about the store?" "That's up to you. You can close it and preserve your pride. Or you can transform it and preserve your legacy." She stood to leave, then paused. "My cousin Michael says the lawsuit is still an option. But Mr. Thompson would rather see you succeed than fail." "Why?" "Because broken people can't help heal a broken system. Changed people can." As Elena walked away, Richard sat alone with his thoughts. The gala ended around him, but his real work was just beginning. The next morning, Whitmore and Associates opened with a new sign in the window. "Dignity First Partner. All customers welcome." Richard stood behind the counter, wearing a different expression. Humility, determination, hope. Marcus Thompson had given him something more valuable than money. He'd given him a chance to become better than he was. The question now was whether Richard would take it. 6 months later, Madison Avenue looked different. The changes were subtle but significant. More diverse faces in upscale stores, more inclusive advertising, more welcoming atmospheres. Whitmore and Associates had transformed. The complaint log showed 0 incidents in 4 months. Customer satisfaction scores had improved 200%. Revenue was up 40%. Richard Whitmore stood behind the counter, greeting customers with genuine warmth. When a young black woman entered seeking a dress for her graduation, he personally helped her find the perfect outfit. No assumptions, no judgments, just service. Elena Rodriguez had become Thomson Tech Solutions Director of Retail Inclusion. She worked with stores across the city, training employees and implementing dignity standards. Her work had prevented dozens of discrimination incidents. Marcus Thompson sat in his office, reviewing the quarterly Dignity First report. 53 retail partners, 0 tolerance violations, measurable improvement across all metrics. His assistant knocked. The mayor's office called. They want to discuss expanding the program citywide. Marcus smiled. Schedule the meeting. The program was working. Not perfectly, but progressively. Change was slow, but it was happening. His phone buzzed. Text from Elena. Richard just helped his 100th customer of color this month. He's actually good at this when he tries. Marcus replied, People can change. They just need the right motivation. These life stories weren't just about individual transformation. They were about systematic change. About creating environments where dignity was the default, not the exception. The touching stories of discrimination still happened. But now they were met with consequences. Real consequences. Economic consequences. Social consequences. The black stories that had once ended in frustration now ended in accountability. And sometimes, in redemption. Marcus's next speaking engagement was at Harvard Business School. His topic, The Economics of Dignity, How Inclusion Drives Innovation. He'd tell the students about a store owner who learned to see customers as people, not stereotypes. About an employee who found her voice and used it to create change. About a system that transformed because someone demanded better. Real-life stories had power. They could change minds, open hearts, and transform businesses. Marcus closed his laptop and walked to the window. Somewhere in the city, a customer was walking into a store. The question was, would they be seen as a person or a problem? Thanks to the work they'd done, the answer was more likely to be person. That progress was worth celebrating, but the work wasn't finished. It would never be finished. Because dignity wasn't a destination. It was a journey, and every day, every interaction, every choice mattered. What's your story? Have you experienced discrimination in retail or business? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story matters and can help create change. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Help us spread the message that dignity isn't negotiable. Subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming injustice and creating positive change. Together, we can build a world where everyone is treated with respect. Remember, every person deserves dignity. Every customer deserves respect. Every story deserves to be heard. What will you do to make a difference?